Um, so yeah, if you're in it for the wrong reason, no matter the career, it's gonna fall flat.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think PR and communicating is a very personal thing. You connect to people by telling your truth and what you believe in. So if you're not really into it, it's not really gonna work out.
Melting Pot, a global podcast series hosted by Pyle, connects guests who have inspiring stories and reaches out to a multicultural audience over 52 countries. Guests are diverse, such as celebrities, entrepreneurs, travelers, and many more who've had a turning point in their lives and moved over to a holistic lifestyle. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, social media. Hi everyone. Today I am in conversation with Renji Rendava, who's the founder and MD of Mad Hat Asia, Angeline Chandran, who's the general manager, Danielle Chow, who is the communications director. And so I have these three lovely women who are a part of Mad Hat Asia. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Let's start with what is the idea behind Mad Hat Asia? And I think, Renji, you'd probably be the one to answer that because you're the founder. So what really was the idea behind setting up Mad Hat Asia? That's one. And the second part of my question is, why Mad Hat Asia?
I think Mad Hat Asia, like the reason why I guess we've done what we've done, it's a different answer from why it was set up. It was actually set up, we started out to really just be able to earn a little money between myself and my first, I guess, partner or staff at the time. We really wanted to kind of just get back into communications after having been in corporate positions on our beginning of an entrepreneurial journey. But what really happened was while I was doing a little bit of freelance with some clients at that time, we realized that there was just kind of this real gap of the way PR was being executed at that time. So clients kind of either had this choice of big network kind of agencies in the PR firm, in the PR sphere, or they had just kind of like freelancers or very focused, service-driven, boutiques. And what we realized that the clients really appreciated was that at that time, we were coming in with just kind of like, okay, we're not going to talk about like what's specifically a press conference and all that. We want to talk about who your audiences are. We want to talk about what resonates with them. We want to talk about how your brand's going to resonate with them. And I think that was a bit of an approach that at that time, back in 2015, was not something that was very common in the approach of communications. So it's kind of strictly PR, was press conferences, press releases, media. And mind you, this during a time where influencer engagement was not as big as it was, as it is now. And so to be honest, Mad Hat just kind of grew from there. So, one client grew to 2, grew to 4, grew to 6. The team grew along with it. It started in a living room. And one day we found ourselves in an office and we're like, whoa, we're a real agency now, right? So yeah, that's kind of what it is. And I think why it's continued and why it's grown is because along the way, Mad Hat has just met communicators of incredible talent who didn't quite agree with the way sometimes it's being executed, like to be able to be a communication practitioner. Most of the time, if you're in an agency, it comes with a lot of the challenges that comes with agency. And you've got the issues of work-life balance and that kind of thing. So we really set our focus on how do we execute this in a way where we can do what we love in communications, but be able to set our own boundaries in doing it, and really be able to add value to the work that we're putting out. And I think that's just been the driving force of why we've kept going and why we've kept doing it. But yeah.
How important is that aspect of social media in today's PR and communications world for your clients specifically?
Yeah, hi. So I think for me, from the beginning of when social media was even kind of a thing, a medium to kind of communicate was probably maybe about 10, 12 years ago, with the birth of Facebook, or rather the boom of Facebook, right? And at that time, I think everybody was kind of scrambling to kind of figure out how, marketers at least, were scrambling to kind of figure out how to utilize this very powerful tool. And at that time, it was kind of a bit of a wild, wild west, because there weren't kind of boundaries, there weren't governance, and not much avenues to kind of use the platform to advertise, right? So it was kind of organic. But then when it eventually was monetized, was when marketers kind of started taking things very seriously. But even at that time, 10, 12 years ago, I remember speaking to my colleagues back then and saying that, hey, it's funny that there is a separate component called social media, or social media agencies, who are actually kind of championing this component of communications, when actually PR people are in an optimal position to do so. Because what we do is we craft narratives. And we craft, directions in terms of communication. We put out what we think is best for the brand in what meets the needs of consumers, right? So for that reason, we should be the one kind of being the custodians of social media. But then, obviously that's not how it happened. Obviously the advertising boys were really smart and actually capitalizing it, and opening up social media kind of divisions within the organization. And there was the birth or surge of social media agencies after that. But here we are now in 2022, where I feel that, a lot of PR practitioners and communicators are actually empowered to then take ownership of their social media space in terms of narrative and communications. And yes, it's a very, very crucial component 12 years ago, and it's an even more important component in the comm sphere now.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that, actually. I've had a friend who's been I've before been in the industry for 10 over years. And I have friends who started out with me, and she can basically tell me that when we're basically looking now at campaigns that require no media whatsoever, it's all just purely influencers. And it's a very nice evolution of how influencers have been growing. We started first with the bloggers, where they had blogspot, Squarespace, whatever they were using at that point of time. And that slowly became Facebook, and then now Instagram, and now TikTokers. So, and you can see the shift in demographic going as the space evolves. So it's very interesting to see what will probably come up next in the future generations as well. So as PR practitioners, we have to evolve along with it as well.
So in its traditional sense, PR predominantly look at stakeholder relationship. And the stakeholder relationship in this part of the world is narrowed down predominantly to media and now influencers, right? And sometimes, beyond just media and influencers, there are other stakeholders that we build relationships with. And then, of course, advertising focus a lot on the mass communication, especially when it comes to, promotional driven items where you want to kind of promote something and you want to promote to the masses. It's kind of very much a larger comms direction that is kind of pushed out to a larger group of people. Now, if I had to break it down further in exactly what the difference is, it's a bit of a push and pull. So with advertising, the focus is very much pushing content, pushing messages, pushing promos, to kind of, from a brand point of view, I'm going to push this out because this is my focus in terms of getting the message out there. When it comes to comms and PR, the focus is very much pull. I lure you with interesting content. I lure you with interesting messages. I lure you with human interest stories. So that's the difference, the glaring difference between advertising and PR per se.
My understanding is that Mad Hat Asia is a women-led PR agency, right?
In effect, but not by design.
No, So can you explain that?
I can start, but so I mean, we're definitely not a agency or a collective who like aim to be women-led. Yes, it was founded by a woman. Yes, most of the leadership team are women, but it's never been something that we've like cognitively set out to do. We do have a lot of male actors, and they bring perspectives. I think what matters to us is, I wish there was a better word than the buzzword of diversity, but it really does matter. And so, gender aside, what we have are just a lot of different personalities. So yeah, there happen to be women in the leadership positions, but it hasn't been the way we've wanted to design it necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges that you do face? I mean, we've, in a more broader sense, some challenges that you face, and how have you been able to overcome those?
Well, there have been a lot of challenges, and I think some of the challenges are no longer challenges, that crops up new challenges. So, but I think some of the key challenges we face, as business owners, is one key one that I've noticed is talent. That it's very kind of hard to find good talent within the industry, and I think right now this seems to be a common problem across board, not just in the PR agency sense, but just in general with everyone I'm speaking to, seems to have is a common issue. Another challenge that I feel that was a lot more glaring in the beginning when we first started, but I feel has evolved right now is people's understanding of PR. Like Rengeeta said, what is PR? I mean, like different people have different versions of it, and like I said, in this part of the world, it was predominantly media relations. So we've kind of been pigeonholed into doing that component of the marketing umbrella, right? But then coming out of that, with the digitalization of things and having to evolve, that also means that we as comms practitioners have also evolved over time, which means our capabilities, our understanding, the application of comms and narrative have also evolved, and it is applicable in a wider sense. And it's actually getting people to understand that, educating people about the usage of comms and how to effectively use comms and how to work better with communicators within the agency setting has been one of our biggest challenge. It still is, but I think that people are a lot more savvy these days with understanding the usage of comms and how to utilize agencies better. But that has always been a struggle from my perspective.
Yeah, one challenge I would say that MedHead has really taken care of and has overcome is really work-life balance and work-life harmony. In that sense, like we know, we all have had the stories where because you're working from home, that line between what you do at work and what you do at home is completely blurred. You're working to like 10 p.m. You don't know when to stop. That's what you've been doing. Your kids start budging into meetings because they're at home. There's nothing you can do about it, or kids are sick and things like that. So it's really helpful to be in that we've come up with policies. And our ethos and our philosophy is that it's based on empathy, it's based on flexibility, it's based on knowing what you as an individual need in your life and helping to craft policies around that.
What are some, some guidelines is not really the right way to put it, but from your experience, what do you think people should be looking out for if they really want to get into PR and communications, the positives of it? And because it clearly is a growing industry and it's sort of maturing, and there are agencies like yourselves and there are others as well. So if someone wants a career what are some sort of suggestions and some kind of feedback that you could have for them?
I don't know if this is specific to PR, I guess, but like what I would say is really, really important is to understand why they are looking at it, for what reason. And I think that that has evolved over the years. Again, I remember like, when Angie and I were practicing PR like 15 years ago together or something, there was that connotation where it was a lot of glam. There was, a lot of it was parties and celebrities and all that kind of thing. And I would start telling newbies that it's a lot of heavy lifting. And then they realized that I meant that literally, because you are lugging press kits and goodie bags and chairs across the room, right? In your little black dress. But we did see people coming into it for, not to say the wrong reasons, but not with a full understanding of why they're going into it. So I don't think it only applies to PR, but I think anyone looking into getting into any industry needs to kind of understand why they want to and have certain expectations. Because if you don't have expectations, you don't know what you're trying to work towards, and that can always change later. I think like in the current state, not so much like what they should look out for, but I think in practice would be to ensure that they're acting in a manner that is that they can buy into, to speak on things that they do believe in. Because I think one thing that I've seen time and time again is if a communicator doesn't believe in what they're saying, it shows.
Any campaign that has really been something which has given you immense satisfaction? I mean, all your clients are important to you, so I get that. But any one campaign that you feel was really, really special for whatever reason?
I want to say Levi's because it is a very, very fun brand. It's a really fun client to work with. It speaks to it's a very strong, obvious version of public relations, which is consumer relations, it's lifestyle expression. It's working with with celebrities to dress them, throwing big parties, to drive positive associations with the brand and everything. So being able to work on Levi's is very satisfying on its own, just because you are able to work with such a big brand like that, and be able to touch so many different facets of public relations is very interesting.
What is the one difference that you see in the approach in KL versus in Singapore? The approach of the clients, the approach of how how it's done. Is there like similarity, or are there differences? And if there are differences, just one difference that really stands out in the way people approach the business aspect of it.
Interesting that you bring this up, because I think Danielle brought up something that was that I didn't think of as a key difference in this market, is that obviously the scale of the markets are different. I mean, we are a larger country in Malaysia and in a smaller country in Singapore. But the one thing that stood out to her, at least, is the language, right? Because we have we have multiple languages here that we speak, and most of our materials, or whatever comms materials that we draft and we write and we produce, are then translated and produced in different languages to then reach a larger audience, right? So that nothing gets lost in translation. And that's not a common practice in Singapore, because English is predominant language in Singapore, right? So that was one key one that she had brought up when I was speaking to her last month when I was down. And I think from a client's perspective and just kind of dealing with the different clients, there isn't that much of a difference, to be absolutely honest. But I think in both markets, there's a lot of appreciation for creativity. And both markets are actually equally hungry for, what's the next new thing, what's the next hot thing. So I feel like both markets operate quite similarly. Now, obviously, outside of Malaysia and Singapore, things are a lot more different in comparison. So that's why if I had to compare both markets, it seems very similar in the way we operate, in the way we think, in our desire for what we want to see come out of the marketing industry. Pretty similar.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been very, very insightful talking to the three of you, and good luck to Mad Hat Asia, and and hopefully you're going to expand, and the next time I speak with you, you probably have offices in other parts of Asia as well. And I can see the passion, the drive, and the authenticity of what you're trying to do. It absolutely comes through in this conversation. So thank you once again. And I've really enjoyed this. And Angeline, as you can see, whether I talk to one person or I talk to multiple guests, it doesn't really matter. So thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed this and I appreciate it. Thank you.
For more weekly conversations, do listen to Melting Pot on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Follow us on YouTube and on Instagram at Podcast Melting Pot. So until the next episode, this is Payal signing off.